Today I saw the trailer for the new Legally Blonde show, Elle, and it kind of hurt my feelings. So the show is set in 1995, and I'm going to be real honest with you. I turned 5 in 1995, but it's not really an accurate representation of 1995 anyway. Because this is some sort of alternate timeline, and it's not just an alternate timeline to the Legally Blonde series. It seems like it's an alternate timeline for the entire world. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in 2 seconds. Okay, so blah 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 blah. 1995. Elle Woods. I did not catch who is playing her now. But obviously not Reese Witherspoon. Quick interjection, because this was something I could very easily look up after I was done ranting at the camera. The actress playing Elle is Lexi Mindtree. Elle Woods, so you're like typical California girl, the way we find her at the beginning of Legally Blonde, you know. In all the pink, in all the fashion. Her parents come to her and they're like, we're moving to Seattle. So they move to Seattle. And Seattle, in this show, is apparently a place where the high school has no preps. There are no cheerleaders. This is... look, okay, I get it. It's just the trailer, but the trailer presents this world where there are like no cheerleaders or whatever, and Elle Woods in her bright pink outfit is surrounded by teenagers in black t-shirts and black jeans. No one is wearing like color. Some of them have the little plaid flannel shirt tied to their waists and all of that, but nobody is wearing a particular amount of color. Nobody is blonde except her, unless I missed a blonde. I might have, I saw the trailer once and got way too in my head and decided to talk about it without even really reviewing it, just to preserve this raw experience. So she sits down at this table at lunch with, just the grungiest. Like, they're not goths. They're definitely 90s grungers, cleaner. I think cleaner than a lot of those 90s grunge kids actually were. Sound off if you were one. But they're all just looking at her like, and like, okay. So, the original Legally Blonde does address this idea that we project this image of these beautiful blonde, we're gonna use the word, it's terrible, bimbos, idiots who are beautiful. That's not a great word either. And it's the whole thing is about her, defying those expectations, secretly working her ass off, and then, it's hard to get into Harvard? But some of that is posing her against the social hierarchy that she both benefits from and is held down by, by that stereotype. Which, she clearly... She doesn't... She's been comfortable playing into it at parts of her life, but is clearly able to break it, like, immediately, because if she wasn't able to, yeah, she probably wouldn't have got into Harvard. There's like slight lines about her being like a diversity or whatever, but not really. I mean, and she's still rich. Like, they're all still wealthy people, and that's one of the ways you get into Harvard, but it's one of the ways you get into college at all. So, but I think playing in a class and social hierarchy that is already the class that she's in is a little different from presenting a teenage version of that doesn't resemble reality at all. And that's why I say, like, it's clearly an alternate history, not just of Elle Woods, but of the world. Because, yes, it was 10 years later or whatever, but I was one of the girls that they're framing as the bullies in this show, you know what I mean? Like, I was kind of like an alt girl who hated pink and hated, you know. Okay, we can argue all day long, but I am on the lighter end of brown hair, but I was even blonder. Like, I was a blonde child. My hair darkened in middle school. And then I was like, I went, you know, really hard into the not like other girls. We were not of a social standing to even begin to bully an Elle Woods type. We might have been, like, really fucking mean, and I... Look, I'm not saying I never bullied anyone. That's just not true. I was as much of a mean girl from the I'm not like other girls perspective, but we were not socially up the hierarchy enough that, like, anything we could have particularly done would have affected a girl like Elle, you know? And that's what immediately, like, hit me as hard to accept about this concept, like, for me personally. And here's what I'm gonna say. I don't think the show is gonna be bad. I think it's probably gonna be good, actually. It looks like something I will enjoy once I get past just being like, this isn't a similar situation. Like, the really, like, stuck-up elite intellectuals of Harvard Law School, you know, treating someone who is financially their same class, but is, you know, otherwise different and assumed to be lesser than them, just feels a lot different than, taking an aesthetic and a social group that was historically more of the bullied than the bulliers. I'm not saying nobody ever did, obviously. Like I said, I was very mean too. The mean girlism is not actually limited to blondes, but like in the power dynamics of school, and not even just high school. Middle school was terrible for me because I did a hard rejection of, like, traditional femininity and went into that alt sort of thing, and like I had the Hot Topic trip pants, I had the chain Metallica wallet, and I genuinely enjoyed listening to Metallica, but like a lot of what I put on about that aesthetic was actually a rejection of exactly what Elle Woods, at least by the end of the first film, like completely stands for. You know, that fusion of like my femininity does not take anything away from me. And maybe that's where I'm bringing like too much of my own personal nonsense into it. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. It's the internet, so you know. But it feels so weird. Because so much of, you know, what they're presenting is like it's almost feels like being held down on the schoolyard and like, you know, like, no, you still suck. Awesome. Like I said, the show is probably going to be a lot more nuanced than this one trailer that I saw. God's willing. Writers, directors, willing. It will be more complex than that. But the concept, the very concept of a high school that, like, you know, is so far out of that traditional, you know, athletes and normies are on the top and alt girls are on the bottom, I find upsetting. I just do. Although, to be perfectly fucking honest, they call her a poser, but okay, so later on in the trailer, Elle has called one of her friends from California, and it's like they speak another language, and then her friend is like, we'll try to learn the language, which is, I think, actually, like, beautiful. Like, try to find your common ground. But then clearly what she does is she goes to school wearing a Nirvana t-shirt, and she's got her Nirvana t-shirt, and so she's got the Nirvana t-shirt, and like her pants aren't really shown in the trailer or anything, but she's still got like a pink backpack on, and like I think bows in her hair. Her hair is still done, not in like a messy bun, you know, and like. That is actually a perfect, like, representation of my soul. Like, not necessarily exactly specific. Who doesn't like Nirvana? But, you know, not exactly specifically Nirvana. Clearly, somehow, my specific, you know that I'm not like other girls because it was my Metallica merch. Which, wow. How unedgy is that? Like, looking back. It's really not that edgy. But, you know. Sorry, I get distracted by laughing at my middle school self. Because I was, you know, I was cringe, but I was both mean girl and bullied. Mean girl, bullied bully. You know, I was every middle schooler all at once. But the full fusion of kind of like a grungier, edgier, but pink that's me. Like, that's where I actually landed. So like, I'm gonna go off on a weird tangent, and I'm gonna leave it in. We sort of culturally have condemned Sandy at the end of Grease for changing entirely. All she did was change her clothes and smoke a cigarette. Like, there's no proof that she changed entirely for a man. Like, this is something she has been exposed to and resistant to for the entire musical. But to think that she likes her friends, right? She likes the Pink Ladies. And she likes Danny. And I think trying on a little bit of, what they have going on makes absolute sense. The thing that we reject about the musical is that it happens all at one point at the end. And that's just part of the limitation of musicals, okay? We've got maybe 2.5 hours to tell you a story. And most of the story is about how Danny tries to be more of a goody two-shoes and it doesn't work out. Like, not necessarily even because he's a loser, but because he's, like, so entrenched in some amount of loser culture. Which it's actually the opposite. He's too cool to be a loser normie, but he like letters. Guys, Danny Zuko like fucking letters in track. We ignore that part. But that's what really makes that. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? No, you don't. I think if Sandy's like catsuit at the end of Grease, like at the end of the film version of Grease, and if people did it more often in the stage production, was bright pink, we'd understand that they're meeting halfway on the bridge, right? They're both open to new experiences. Whatever. In many ways, Sandy is also me. Isn't that the great thing about, like, storytelling? You can find a little bit of yourself in most things. Isn't that great? Isn't media beautiful? But yeah, looping back around, I was just saying, like, seeing that image of, like, Elle Woods with the pink backpack, but the, like, extra cleaned up grunge look, me. I was like, oh, she's me. You know? And I think ultimately, that's one of the reasons why I probably will end up watching the show. But it also deeply offended me, and I was like, I feel really mad about this. Obviously, it's not that serious. And when I say I feel really mad about this, I'm like, my instant, like, reaction was like, ugh. Ugh. What? Why? Why are the alt girls the villains? Because the whole point is that, you know... And they'll get to the point where, like, other girls are not your villains, like, in general. But some of the ways in which is the character's name Viv, in the film And actually even more so in the movie.
I actually meant to say musical right there.
What positions that character as a villain is not her place as the new girlfriend. Yes, they are cast in competition for the same male attention, which, you know, Elle and Viv eventually realize they don't need. She is cast as the villain because she has accepted what this intellectual portion of society has deemed that a woman must be and do to be respected. And I think it's just hard to find that same dynamic within, alt girl versus pink girl. Like, it is a time-honored, like, dichotomy. but that dichotomy in high school is absolutely completely different from the, you know, feminine, anti-feminine dichotomy in a law school. You know, full-grown fucking adults, because they've already gone through undergrad. I think, and I mean, I think one of the conclusions I'm coming to is that the exact message of Legally Blonde, that exact feeling that is validated within that film, is an adult view. Like, it can be processed by high schoolers. Not me. Truth out. Weird phrase, but we're gonna go with it. Truth out. I resisted Legally Blonde when it first came out. Because I was still deep into my not like other girls phase. You know, I was so deeply resistant to that image, you know? I was more of, you know, the girlfriend character than an Elle Woods, and it absolutely displayed in my personality towards the film until, you know, I finally let it into my heart, and Legally Blonde is one of the things that helped me reconcile, you know, the amount of femininity I had in me, like the attraction to pink, which I rejected for many, many years, and you would never know it now. Everything in this room is fucking pink. And, you know, and the essentially the intellectualism that I wanted to grasp at, like, you know, I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be so fucking smart. Like, smart was such a part of my identity. And a lot of that is exactly square on blamed by being put, you know, in advanced classes and all of that. Whatever the fuck it was called. I've so much, like, tried to reject some of the nonsense that was in my head as a child. I don't even remember what my particular class was called. But yeah, you know, I got put into those, like, accelerated classes, like, 3rd or 4th grade. And that's a canon event for a lot of people. I've wandered very far from the topic of the trailer, and I do think there's not a solid conclusion. I think sometimes that, like, not having, like, a solid conclusion about something makes me feel like I shouldn't talk about it. But I think that some of the, like, oh, I need to be, like, so intellectual. And sometimes the intellectual thing to do is to open the conversation and talk and not necessarily know where the conclusion is and be open to finding a new conclusion. I am going way off the rails. Oh my god. Okay. Anyway, I've said it like 3 times now. I'm gonna say it again. Sound off in the comments. Are you interested in this new chapter in the Legally Blonde franchise? Are you also a little bit insulted by how much you see yourself in both sides? A little bit insulted by the idea of a high school where you could have been like the cool girls for liking like rock? For like liking rock instead of Britney Spears? Like, are you a little bit like upset and insulted by it? 'Cause I am. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.